Good evening and welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. We welcome this evening Mr. Derek Triplett. He is the senior pastor of Hope Fellowship in Daytona Beach. He's also an award-winning author, radio show host, and entrepreneur. Derek, thank you for being with us once again.
It's my honor.
Thank you
Good
very
evening.
much. Yeah, we just talked about the fact that Derek Triplett and I have been interviewing each other since 2016. So I thank you so much for your time and being part of this literacy tribe. It's really hard to get people to stay in your word and in our word, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you for being here. Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is sponsored by Eyeless Diamonds LLC, brought to you by Milton McCulloch, author of Love and Emancipation, L.D. Robinson, owner and operator of Ladero Press, and A. Dante Production, and the Fresh Book Festival, which will be here in January 6, 7, 8, 2022. We're so excited. So if you have any questions for Derek, please put them in the chat room. And I want to let you know that this is being recorded. So Derek, thank you for coming again. And take a moment to introduce yourself to our listening audience.
I'm Derek Triplett, and I'm grateful and honored again to be a part of this. I just kind of view myself as a change agent from different vantage points via radio and television and via local church pastoring and the like. And so it's kind of all mixed together. I'm an author, and my writing concentrates primarily on relationships and personal development for men. It's interesting that I've done several personal development sessions for women, but I've never written a book yet, and so I'm kind of scared to do that. And so, but we'll see what happens. That one makes me a little nervous. But one of the reasons that I have done that for women the last few years is that they're things that need to come from the male perspective for women. And there are things for men that need to come from the female perspective. And for women, they need to come from the perspective of someone who is not romantically involved with them or has any intent to be, because you get a different level of truth. There's only so much a man's going to tell you if he's trying to date you.
Well, there's that. But you do have a book that, and we'll get to that later, What to Say Before You Say I Do. Is that the name of it? Yeah, so we'll talk about that later. So that's kind of a woman's look at maybe some things she should do as a male and a female, right?
Well, what you say when you say I do was for males and females, because basically, and it's interesting at the time that we are taping this particular discussion, we're in the middle of cuffing season.
Yes.
And cuffing season messes people up. It's, in other parts of the country, it's getting cold outside, or it is cold outside. And cuffing season kind of runs from October to February. And, New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, all of that, most popular times for people to pop the question. And so what I do with What You Say When You Say I Do is I basically take the traditional wedding vows. I take you to be my lawful wedded wife, to have and to hold, for richer, for poor. And I break down what each phrase means, because in 90 seconds, repeating after one of us preachers, people make promises in many cases that they're not even equipped to keep. And most times when somebody says they broke their marriage vows, they're talking only about the sex part.
Right.
And there's so many other vows that you make in that 90 seconds that's not just about your sexual responsibilities. And so I just try to help people with that particular piece. I wouldn't recommend that anybody get married without reading it.
It's a very good book. And I think that it makes you look 360 as opposed to every quarter, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever, however
Right.
people really look at that. And I think that when you speak about people who got married in my age group, there was no such thing.
No. I
Yeah.
was actually, I remember when the book first came out and I was teaching on it, and a lady came up to me and said,
You have a copy of it to show? Oh, no, you probably don't. You do? Right
I would
here?
have to
No.
go off
No,
camera.
go
To
ahead.
get it.
It's up to
Lady
you. I
came
mean,
up
you
to
can.
me and said, where were you 30 years
I
ago?
know, right?
I said, in college. I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I was in college.
because there were no blueprints for us,
No.
right? Because the blueprint came from grandma to her mother, to your mother,
Mm-hmm.
from your mother to you. And that stuff was so convoluted that nobody knew what to say by the time it got to my generation, right?
Right. And in many cases, people pass down their trauma.
Right.
And pass down their dysfunction and pass down their pain. So do this so you won't go through what I went through.
Right. Right. So don't disregard if he comes home a little late. Don't worry about it. You know, that kind of stuff. I'm like, what? And then, so then you have my generation, we have children, and most of them are getting married very late.
Yes, very late.
Very late.
Very late.
Like 30s, 35, 34. Right. And I'm not sure that they were just so completely devastated by my age group.
Well, the research says that that's what happened. And in
Is that
many
what
cases,
happened? Okay. Yeah.
They in many cases, they're afraid of it.
Mm.
And they're afraid of marriage. And the research says also many are waiting because they really, really, really want it to work, because they've lived the failure of it. And as I've shared, I think even in some of the F.R.E.S.H book festivals and one of the other workshops that we did, is that
oh, you mean the one you had people crying at? Okay, that one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one.
It's like you can stay together and damage the child.
Yes.
So it's not just the damage of divorce,
right?
It's the damage of fake marriages. Absolutely. And so you teach them how to pretend. And a lot of stuff ends up happening. And so, you would bring I forgot the lady was crying in the session.
Yes, she was. I mean, like my husband and I used to fight like Quakers, you never knew we were fighting, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not a true response, a household for somebody to grow up in, because you should be able to fight and, talk loud and, say things that you need to say. So, so, our generation pretty much we didn't destroy them. We just gave them another level to look at. So I want to talk about your other books. Let's talk about your book for men. Was that your first one or no?
Yeah, actually, When I Became a Man was the first one. And actually, we're kind of bookending it now, because now the latest one is 6-7 books later is now on men. But what you say, but When I Became a Man was the first one. And here's what I saw. We used to do a lot of things for male personal development, not just within our church, but also I used to do a lot of things in the community. And we would have these sessions because I saw a lot of what I'll call underdeveloped men, just emotionally, as it relates to their careers, as it relates to their pursuit of any kind of purpose, just underdeveloped. And so, I was just a brother saying, hey, let's come along and handle these things. And what I discovered was in my own life that that growing older doesn't necessarily mean growing up. And we
call that the Peter Pan syndrome.
Right. And so When I Became a Man was built on this principle: males are born, men are built. Mm-hmm. And so how does a male become a man? And basically when I became a man, I just kind of took, it's probably the most autobiographical piece that we've done. Just kind of took my journey into adulthood, and here are the things that became important. Here are the failures. Here are the things that, so it covers the gamut. And I don't want anyone to, I usually don't tell people I'm a pastor.
Oh, why? I'm sorry. That's the first thing I said.
I know, and I know, but I usually don't tell because it skews the conversation. Then
Does it? Okay.
it does skew the conversation.
I was
So
still
when
reeling from Sunday, so I apologize.
but no, it's interesting. Um, I moved to a new community about 4 years ago, and because I left pastoring for a while, as you know, and that's a whole nother story.
That's another
But and so when I went to a community that didn't know who I was, and I never told them. And so it allowed me to have conversations more freely, because people start shifting. Oh, that's the preacher. But if you just talk to people without, and I guess people say, well, what do you do? I would just tell them my media portion. I'm in media. And I would just say I'm in media and I do public speaking.
So you think that people shut down when you?
They do.
Oh, okay.
They either shut down or they start to filter what they're going to say or what they're going to do. And the reason that I bring that up is because in my writing, I don't write for the church.
No, you don't.
I do not write for the church. And I remember before
and very non-clinical.
Non-clinical. It's very practical, very, because I want to reach everybody. And I tell people even in my radio broadcast, I don't do radio for the church. There are elements of it in it, but I just go because I believe that God has given me an opportunity to help change the lives of people even before, they're ready to do anything as a matter of faith. And so when I became a man was an extension of those sessions, because I prayed and I said, God, let me affect their minds even before they're ready for you to affect their hearts. So let me help them think differently. Because if I can help them think differently, then we can cut down on some of the mistakes.
One of my favorite, well, I think I read them all, but one of my favorites is Happier Endings. I haven't read this latest. I think I just saw that on your website.
Yeah, it's just coming. Happier Endings is probably my favorite.
I do. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Happier
Endings. Happier Endings is another relationship book. And basically, I wanted, while what you say when you say I do was kind of very, very in depth, if I can say that, I wanted something that was kind of a walk-away handbook. So if you're dating, here's a tool to analyze the relationship. If you're looking to get married, here's a tool to see if you are ready. And I did it kind of allegorical in this sense. There are 18 chapters, it's short. I intentionally did it that way. And each chapter ends with the word end, E-N-D. And so for example, the first chapter is the front end. What should happen at the beginning of a relationship? What should happen at the beginning of the dating process? What should I be doing? Because for me, dating is not just about enjoyment, it's about information gathering.
Now, is it any different because the age groups are different? Or is pretty much across the board, no matter what?
I think that principle is across the board.
Okay.
Because you're gathering information. Who are they? Who are they as an individual? Who are the two of you together? Because two people can be great as individuals and should stay as far away from each other as they can because they don't make a good mix.
Right.
And so in the front end, I'm gathering, and sometimes we get caught up in the enjoyment. We're just, I'm having a good time. There's a good vibe and all of that. And we're not asking or answering the right questions, and so front end, and of course, later on, there's a chapter called the back end. There's a chapter called
what's that chapter in the middle?
Your end and my end.
Your end and my end.
Your end and my end. I tell the story of when, we have a 2-story house, and I tell the story about my wife and I were carrying a sofa up the steps. And I talk about the fact that if either one of us had let go of our end, it could have hurt both of us, and that was the lead in to talk about there are two ends to the relationship, and each person has to hold up their end. You have an end. This is not a free ride for you. You got to do some stuff. And so I love that chapter. There's a chapter called Split Ends, and that's conflict resolution, because you're going to have some conflict. And the interesting thing about split ends is that, not that I know anymore, all mine are gone, but it is that they have to be clipped. And if they're not clipped, then the damage goes to the root and you lose the follicles. And so how often do we avoid conflict? I've been feeling this way for 6 years. How? And you never said anything, or I've been feeling this way, and we avoid conflict. And depending on how we were raised, especially ladies, depending on who raised you, you're not supposed to raise the issue.
Right.
And then depending on, as men, we have to fight our own tendencies, because our tendency is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so we do everything we can to avoid the discussion. Period. We'll avoid the discussion. And so I don't want to just out of the blue bring up something that I don't like when everything else has been going fine. Man, you're going to mess up that. You're going to upset the apple cart. So just shut up. And then the next thing you know, it goes on forever. And it's like that true story. He said, I'm going to the store. And he never came back. Because he didn't deal with the split ends and the like. I think my favorite chapter is, it's interesting that you bring this up, because I'm going to do 18 weeks of this on my podcast. I'm just going to take each chapter for my podcast starting in January. I'm going to do this.
Nice.
But I love the end game. There's a chapter called End Game. And the premise is, what is the ultimate intent of the person that you're dating? If their ultimate intent, like for a guy, if I'm pursuing you to massage my own ego, then once I reach that, it's over for me.
Right.
If
you cross the finish line,
it's over, touchdown.
Yeah.
So now you are boring, and because the thrill is gone. If she's open to you, sir, for financial support, then once you do that, she's done too. I saw this meme the other day. It was a lady, she had a sad face, and the caption was, "I want a sugar daddy, but I don't want to give him no sugar."
Can't do that.
No, that's your dilemma. That is your dilemma. And so the end game, you got to know what that person, if you're dating a person who never has any intentions on getting married and you want to get married, then they can waste your time for 5 years. And vice versa. If you know you never want to get married, then don't lead that person on.
So, and I know most of our viewers here tonight who are on with us, but we're talking to a larger audience. Let me just say that should the end game be talked about in the beginning? And when do you talk about it?
Not at the very beginning, at some point, I'm not, and Janice, no, I know I sound like I was a social worker, but I was not a social worker. But no, it's not a, show up on the first date, what you want, and here's what I'm going to do, and here's what I'm looking, and if you're not looking for marriage, then don't waste my time. No. But you just you see at a point when it's time to have a deeper conversation. And that's, it's kind of crazy because we really weren't taught to date.
Right.
We really weren't taught to date. And it's kind of crazy that like the first several dates, you go do things that you can't talk. You can't talk in the movies. You can't, so you go do things that you can't talk. And so you never get to that situation of having talked enough to ultimately lead into that end game conversation. And then unfortunately, a lot of people, you're 3 dates in, the sex has already happened.
Maybe.
For some people. And so we had intercourse without conversation. So that's kind of crazy. It's like, okay, I don't even know if I like you. But we already had sex. And so now, since I've committed physically, then I got to go further, and so we've put the cart before the horse. And so it's like, okay, they've already seen me naked, so I guess we all need to have another few dates.
And the guy said something the other day, I don't know what I was listening to. He was talking about intimacy. And he says, if you slice it up, it means, I need you to be intimacy. Let's talk about that.
Intimacy, I love the word. Unfortunately, for many people, intimacy means sexual intercourse.
Okay.
And it's not. It's not, especially for men. Especially for men. And I want to ask God about that.
Intimacy?
Facetious.
Okay.
I want to ask God why he made us so different.
Men and women?
Men and women. Okay. Because there are some things that make it difficult. So you've got women, and I'm generalizing right now, that for some women, and not all, because I've met some who are anatomically women, but they are emotionally dudes.
Right. Yeah.
They are dudes, they're leading that process. But in general, sex is a very intimate act for a female. Right. And it doesn't have to be for the majority of men. I think intimacy is a matter of vulnerability.
Mm.
And without vulnerability, there's no true intimacy. I have to trust being close to you. You know, the scripture says they were naked and unashamed. They were totally exposed and there was no shame. That's true intimacy, that I'm now in a place where I don't have to send you my representative. I don't have to hide. I don't have to be anybody but me. I've given you me and allowed you to make a decision. And I think that anything less is unfair. I used to tell the guys, and once again, to anybody who's listening or watching might say, I thought he was a pastor. I don't teach
right.
I teach for people. So I've seen, I used to tell the guys, I said, let me help y'all. If you can't be sanctified, don't be stupid. So
right.
we're not going to talk about sanctification. Let's talk about not being stupid.
Right.
So here's the deal. I said, don't lie to women. If you are in a situation, you are dating and you want to date multiple women, then just tell them that.
Yes.
Just tell them that.
Yes.
And I said, and let them make a decision. And I said, I guarantee you, there are women out there that you will like and be attracted to who will make the decision with you and say, you know what, I'm cool with that. You know, tell me where my day is.
Yeah, right.
You know,
listen,
I'm cool with that. Rather than lying and then, you know, everything else gets messed up. I tell guys in a relationship, if you are done with the relationship,
be done.
Make it official.
Yes, be done.
Make it official.
Yes.
Don't be done with the relationship and stay in it, because either one, you don't want to hurt her feelings, or you don't want to lose the benefits of the relationship.
Right.
But then, and she could have given you every cause. I tell the guys, she could have given you every cause to be done with her. But once you cheat, that's the big joker. So it don't matter what she did, you are now, and she'll be able to say, but I didn't cheat. Blah, 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 but you did, but I didn't cheat.
Right.
But I didn't cheat. And so just tell the truth. Tell the truth. And especially like somebody's in Atlanta, especially in Atlanta, the ratio is with you. The ratio is with you. It's 9-1. It's it's 9-1. And
with
so
some caveats.
Right. And
right.
and some of your competition play for the other team. So
right.
you good. You are good. There are gonna be other options. And so
Anna, let's move to Atlanta. No, let's not.
Somebody one of my people lives there, and he called me. So he said, tell people if they're looking for, tell the fellas, if they're looking for a wife, don't move here.
It's not ours. It is not ours.
It's not going to happen.
You'll be clicking your heels 3 times to get back to Florida.
Don't move here.
Right.
And they said, tell them we closed. Atlanta is closed. So yeah, I just think it's a matter of, to bring it full circle. When we talk about intimacy, we're talking about that ability to be vulnerable. And let me say this, because I think I know I said this in a different session, and I'm going to go ahead. You don't even have to alley-oop it to me. I'm just going to shoot it.
I don't have to throw it to you. Right?
You don't have to throw it to me. Here is the problem.
I love you, dear Drew.
Here is the problem. Here's what happens. A man can have sex with a woman, and if she's not the one or somebody that he's vibing with, she got to go.
Period.
She got to go. She got to go. And a lot of women think, oh, he's being rude. We had sex, now he's going to put me out, or he didn't spend the night, he just left. And here's why. Right after sex, am I shooting the right shot that you wanted me to shoot? Right after sex is one of the most, especially for men, say 25 to 55.
Oh, God.
Right after sex is a very vulnerable time for a man.
Is it?
That's when he starts to become
vulnerable,
inward and vulnerable. And so if you're not the person that he wants to share that part of himself with, you gotta go, because he has the need to share that part. And here's the trip part about it. You'll leave and he'll call a woman he's not sleeping with. But that's the woman who he's really intimate with. That's his girl. And that's the one he shares his dreams with, his hopes, his ambitions, his thought about his new business. And you trying to figure out what happened. If you're not the person to share that level of vulnerability with, you got to go home.
So he just gets up and leaves, period.
He leaves. He leaves because he's not going. And that's the messed up part about us, is that we'll share our sperm quicker than we'll share our feelings.
So have you had conversation about when that script is flipped?
It's painful. It's painful.
That's
when you end up, that's when the guy end up sitting on the bed like Eddie Murphy in Boomerang, saying, call me, call me. Because that movie is the script flipped.
Right.
She's the alpha male.
Yes.
Robin Givens' character is the alpha male in Boomerang. There are 4 movies that are
paramount to that.
They're kind of required for young men.
Yeah.
They're 4. They got to see Boomerang. So they'll be ready for that, because he's sitting there and he's mentally gone. He's mentally gone. And we can't handle that. We cannot handle that. There is thin line between love and hate. Martin Lawrence and that do not make a Black woman snap.
Right.
Do not push her to snap. It's gonna be bad for you. It's gonna be bad for you. Do the right thing.
Okay.
Which for several reasons, the whole racial thing, and how I, get down with all of that, but also the opening scene of Do the Right Thing with Mookie and his girlfriend, and she needs him to do more, but he's okay with it's hot. It looks like it's 1,000 degrees in that apartment, and he's good, and she's not okay.
Right.
The other one, you don't even have to watch the whole movie. There is a scene, and don't call me a bad dad, because
Don't call you a bad dad. This will not be seen by children.
There was a scene in which James Bond movie? Casino Royale.
Okay.
There's a scene in Casino Royale. James is chasing the bad guy. And of course, James is picked up on that the bad guy's wife is, ignored and neglected and unloved. So that's his entry. there's this scene. My son was in middle school at the time. And so he's like in the 8th grade. And so there's a scene in Casino Royale where James is in his villa with this man's wife. They're still clothed.
Right.
She is laying on top of him. They're caressing or whatever. They're fully clothed. Her phone rings. It's her husband. She, without a blink, he's telling her, oh, I got to work late. He's going to kill somebody or something. I got to work late, without blinking, without her voice changing, without anything. She says, oh, okay. Well, I guess it'll be another night by myself. And she hangs up the phone and she tells James, well, I guess we have all night. and, and I looked at my son, Donovan, and I said, don't you ever do that. What you just saw. I said, please understand, they are slicker than us. They have more control than us. Because y'all know, if a man is laying on top of a woman that he ain't supposed to be laying on top of,
his tongue is so tied, he don't know what to say.
He's gonna be dumb and not answer the phone first.
Right.
And then, hello, what? But her pulse never raised. And I told my son, don't you ever forget what you just saw. It's a difference.
I think when it comes to that type of thing, when we talk about cheating per se, I think women are better.
Oh God. Yeah, professionals. Hall of Famers.
Women are much better at it, right?
Hall of Famers.
And why do you think that is?
I think it's the makeup.
Okay.
I think we're different. I think it's the makeup. Here's my facetious but yet committed opinion.
Okay.
I really believe this. When I teach men and women in the church scene, I say to them, watch scripture. God puts Adam asleep. He takes a rib out of him and then wakes him up and presents him Eve. He does not present him a rib. So God does a whole bunch of other stuff while Adam is asleep. Mm-hmm. So there's just a whole bunch of stuff about y'all we don't know unless you tell us, because we were asleep when you were created.
Well, there's that.
I think the makeup, and that's why it's ridiculous, to be all candid. It's ridiculous for previous generations to say that women didn't have the makeup to be head of states, or they were too emotional to be. That is so ridiculous. You all are the champion of multitasking. Nobody multitasks and I know the personal development gurus talk about that there's no such thing as multitasking and all that, but to be able to do different things at different times and they're too emotional. No, crazy. But it is an opportunity for us, I think, if this younger generation would actually learn from the previous generation, I think they're in the greatest position to get it right, because they don't have a lot of the baggage that.
What generation are you talking about now? You're not talking about mine. You're talking about my son and his children.
I would say 30 and down.
Okay.
30, I think they have the greatest chance to get it right, because I try my best with our kids to undo some of that stuff. without throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
I don't know. I don't believe in this whole gender fluidity thing. I do think that there are distinct differences between men and women. And in many cases, it's a matter of function and not ability.
Mm.
So my grandfather may have said, don't let a woman run your money, that type of thing. Whereas I taught the generation coming after me, who's ever better at it.
Right. Run
That
the money.
money is not a function of managing money, is not a function of gender. Whoever's better at it. If my family was waiting on me to pay the light bill, we're going to be in the dark. We're going to be in the dark. It just doesn't come up for me.
Right.
If
it doesn't come up on my phone, it says FPL needs to be paid today.
Right.
There's a situation.
And remember, pre-smartphone, I remember writing a check, sealing it up, putting a stamp on it, and then riding around in my car with it for 5 days because I never got to the post office. I've passed 1,900 mailboxes and never stopped because my mind is on something else. So that can't be a function of gender. I am actually going to do this. And if I don't do it, Donna, you should do it. I'm actually
Okay.
do it for me. I'm
Okay.
actually going to do a couple of segments entitled How I Was Raised.
And you want to do that on Zoom in? I'm going to
do it on Better Relationships.
Okay.
I'm going to do it on Better Relationships. And actually, they haven't agreed yet, but I actually want to have my parents.
Ooh.
I knew you was going to like this idea. I want to have my parents and my children, and to have the 3 generations have a discussion about how, so I can talk to my parents and say, okay, why did you raise me like this?
Both your parents are alive?
Yes.
Wow, what a blessing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so why did you raise me like this? And then talk about the things that I've deviated from, not in a moral or immoral, just perspective. I don't think like that. That's how I was raised, but I don't think like that. And then have the courage to let my children do the same to me. And hopefully—
You think they will, though? You think they will be honest? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully what they will see is, okay, that's why he did this. And now I may not hold it against him because I know that that's, so I'll give you an example, and I'm previewing one of my shows, but that's ridiculous. But anyway,
that's
here.
Okay. Do it here.
So I want to ask my dad in that conversation, because and this is whole gender role. It's like, why did you never teach me to fix anything? I can't fix nothing.
But he knew that. He knew you weren't interested.
Yeah. And so what I want to ask him, well, one, I know that my grandfather didn't.
Right. Okay.
So his dad did. And so I found out early, I said, I need to always be in a position to write a check because I'm going to have to pay somebody to do almost everything that needs to be done. But I want to ask my mom, here's where it happens. My maternal grandfather was a mechanic.
Wow.
And I want to ask my mom, well, if I didn't get it from that side, why wasn't it important to you for me to get it from your side? And to see what their answers would be. my speculation is that my dad set the agenda for my raising.
Probably because you're a boy.
I was a
man,
boy.
You're a boy. Right. You're a man now, but you're a boy then.
And so I'm guessing my dad said, and so what he couldn't do, he couldn't pass down to me. Now he taught me how to dress.
He did it well, though. That's what he did well.
He taught me how to speak. He taught me how to, and so those things, but why wasn't it important? So in turn, I never taught Donovan how to fix anything. So, so if we can look at why we ended up in certain ways, and especially with this issue of gender roles, because for example, my wife wants me to cook more often. My mother never who is a tremendous cook. My mother never brought me into the kitchen and taught me how to cook. So all the cooking I've learned as an adult. And so the question is, why didn't you teach me how to cook? Because probably in the 70s,
right? Men weren't. That wasn't something that a man.
That wasn't something that they did.
Right. Unless the man was very interested, coming to the kitchen and want to be by his mom, because there's some very professional chefs that are our age, right? But they were in the kitchen with their mother very early, knowing that that's what
very early. And so I'm pretty sure that if I had said to my dad, and he's a different man now, but if I had said to my dad back then, I want to go in the kitchen with mama.
Ooh, he just said, you can't do that.
No, you can't do that. And then he just started wondering about my sexuality.
Right. Boy, is this something you got to tell me?
Yeah, you like girls, don't you, boy? I asked about macaroni and cheese. I didn't ask about
right, exactly. Like what goes into it, Daddy? That's not rocket science, right? But yeah, you couldn't do that. You absolutely could not do that. So
it's an interesting conversation that I want to have, so as to
I think that's wonderful.
Hopefully, because I think I arrested some things and didn't pass them down to my children. And I think that they're going to have to arrest some things so that it's not passed down to my grandchildren.
So do you think your parents will be open for? Have you given them any kind of?
I haven't, and you know me, I'm Mr. Idea. So I haven't talked to them about it. I think, and grant you, my parents are divorced.
Okay. Yeah. So
but they're best of friends and all of that. But I know my mom, I think at this point, 10 years ago,
no
way. I think now both of them would do. I don't think my kids would do it.
Yeah, I don't think your daughter would do it, but I don't know your son, so I don't know.
Yeah, Destiny would do it.
Donovan
would do it. Donovan, I think at this stage of their life, Donovan would do it quicker than Destiny.
Really? Okay.
Donovan, my friends call Donovan light-skinned Derek Triplett.
Oh.
He's so much like me, but yet so different.
Right.
But he thinks and processes and that, and so, but it's an idea that I've had mulling in my head for about 6 months.
So January, or are you going to start at Black History Month?
Black History would be a great time. You're a genius. That's why I love you.
It would be. Black
Just
History.
do a whole family thing.
Yes.
For Black History.
Right.
And
Black history is not just history; it's historic.
Right. Yeah. Right. So I love it. So I'm gonna broach that subject with them.
I really hope they do it. And I think
there's a lot to learn because our different generations, the perspective is different. That's why, bringing the conversation full circle, when people who are from either baby boomers or those who are left, who are from, the greatest generation, when they tell people, y'all, we stayed together, it was different. It was different because you could even hear it in the language. Why did y'all get married? Because we could make a life together.
But listen, their sphere of influence was very small.
Yes.
Okay.
We could make a life together. And so it was about coming together to have a house and children. And you didn't have to like each other. You didn't have to have, actualization in the relationship. It was about, we're going to build something together.
And sphere of influence. Like my mother went from her mother's house to my father's house.
Right.
So she didn't know anything about being single.
Nothing.
Right. I made her apply for a passport. Right. It's like, you need a passport. Right.
Right.
And so when I told her I wanted a passport, she was like, what do you want one of those for?
What you want one of those for?
Right. So it's just there. Yeah.
When Chris Rock was doing the whole tambourine, and it's on Netflix, but when he was doing that whole tour, Donovan and I went to, my Father's Day gift was, he was still in Atlanta at the time. He's in New York now. And my Father's Day gift was, tickets to the show. And so I flew to Atlanta and Donovan and I went to the show. And, he did that bit on, he said, he says, I got divorced. He said, and I don't know how, maybe it was 13 years or 14 years. And he said, my parents were together for 40 years or whatever. But my wife and I were together and interacted in those 14 years more than my parents did in 40 years. Because remember, he leaves to go do a 12-hour shift. There was no cell phone. There was he left at 6 and came home at 6.
Right.
And so he does this whole bit, he gets home and she says, did you miss me today? No, I've talked to you 5 times. We've texted each other 7 times. I didn't have a chance to miss you.
Right.
It's just like, it's no. And so that it's different. And I think we have to make sure that we understand that the eras are different. And
one of the questions I hope you ask your parents are, when did they really get to know each other? Like my father worked 11 to 7 and my mother worked 7 to 3:30. So somebody was always home. Right. But they never saw each other.
Never.
They never saw each other.
Ships passing in the night.
And so they really didn't get to know each other until later in life. And the sad part about that is, my dad got sick. So they really never got to know each other. Right. And so that's one of the questions I want you to ask them. Like, when did they really get to know each other? And when did that happen?
And they were 19 and 18.
Right. I think my mother was 16, just barely legal. Right. Just barely legal.
So it happens. And then what ends up happening is that if you're not careful, you pass your pain along.
Right. Your trauma.
You pass your trauma along to the next generation.
So now that you blew all my questions away, and I knew you would, but let me just let's ask at least one before we say goodbye. And I want to talk about the workshop on hurt people. Let's talk about that for a minute.
It's become a cliche, but it's so real. And I think we've talked about it basically all night. Pain is transferable, and sometimes it's not sometimes you don't know you're transferring it. You know,
Mhm.
you think it's your perspective, and it's really your pain. And so hurt people can hurt people unknowingly, but then also hurt people can hurt people knowingly. When I'm going through trauma or anything of that, it becomes easier for me because the person in pain doesn't have a problem inflicting it. I'm in pain. Everybody's going to be in pain. And that these mass shootings, I
Right.
was bullied. I was this, I was that. And so what ends up happening is we have not been taught how to process our pain. You know, one of the things that I just did in our church is I was dealing with a psychological subject, but I always said, you know, I'm not coming at it from a clinical perspective. I'm not trained to do that. I'm coming at it from a biblical theological perspective, and you'll have to get the clinical part from a
Somewhere
person
else.
who's trained to do that.
Right.
And sometimes hurt people can hurt people also as a means of control. You know, so I got hurt in the last relationship, so I'm never going to feel that again. So this is what I'm doing in the next relationship.
Right.
You know, hurt people can also, and this is kind of the one that is a little bit insidious.
You keep letting the last thing. What was that you said? You keep letting the last time.
You keep letting the last time be the next time.
You keep letting the last time.
And so he hurt you or she hurt you. The person in front of you didn't. And if you did not heal, then you're just bringing that baggage. It's like that old song from Erykah Badu, Bag Lady.
Yes.
You know, you're bringing all of this stuff. And so I think the biggest challenge too, and I'll say this, and you know, I don't, and hopefully people will come to the workshop, but I'll say these two things. One, it is one of our problems is when we don't know we're operating out of pain. And so
when you don't
sometimes
recognize it.
you don't recognize it.
Right. Okay.
And so I have to get help with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have to get help with that. The other thing is when we are so hurt, we have become numb to the feelings of others. Mm. So the fact that, you know, the fact that I cause you pain doesn't bother me because somebody caused me pain. And so
your attitude is get over it.
Really? Yeah, just get in line, get in line. I think the final thing with that is in the Black community, and I know our audience is not just, you know, Black, but in the Black community, we don't get help in processing our pain.
Right. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that you can't get in our thinking that you cannot get help from people who don't look like you.
That's true. But also
we have better now, but I mean,
we're better now. That used to be, but it's on the flip side of that, especially for us, because the nuances of African, we are different people.
Right.
And there may be, I'll put it this way. I don't advise certain Black people need a Black therapist. Because if that person does not have the type of racial intelligence,
right,
and ethnic intelligence to know, you know, what to do and where you're coming from, they have no reference point.
Right.
I really tell couples, Black couples, you definitely need a Black therapist because white people will tell you to go do something in an effort to fix your marriage that could get you cut.
Right.
So, they don't know us. They don't know us like that. And you might not want that work in white people's houses. That does not work over here. And so you do need some
and or when they take for granted that where your thinking is biblical, right? So
right.
you walk in the room, they want to talk about Mary and Martha, and I'm like, listen, I don't even know where that is.
Right.
What?
Right.
Why are
and
you
that's
coming?
The other piece,
right?
Is you go to the people who are more prayer leader than therapist.
Right. I was like, girl,
I didn't come here to have church.
Take this $80 and give me a,
Yeah, I didn't come here to have church. And this, this is clinical.
Right. This is, but I think her reference was, since I was Black, I would know where she was coming from. Right.
Right.
And what I had to tell her
she
was
basically tried to give you the here's what she did. I jumped in and I jumped in an Uber one time and the guy immediately turned his station from country to hip hop. So let me cut on music for the Black dude.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So she thought, for you to start talking about Mary and Martha and that type of thing. And I'm going to upset the church people real quick. Might as well on my way out.
Yeah.
There aren't many, if any, great examples of good romantic relationships in the Bible.
No, exactly.
There are. And what's interesting about it is that the person who says the most stuff in the Bible about how to manage a marriage wasn't married.
Right.
Paul says, it ain't for me.
I'm not doing it.
I can't do it. Paul's like, I can't do it. But for those of y'all who do it, here's some good advice for y'all. Right. But I got to go to the next city to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so I don't need a wife.
Paul was definitely single, LD.
He was single.
He was single, right. And so I think that's why when we talk about therapy, why we kind of fall away from that. But it's getting much better now. It really is. And we're late on the hour, but I got one more thing to ask you. I want to talk about, I'm sorry, were you done with her people? Mm-hmm. Okay. So
I'm not, yeah, I messed up your whole.
All right, listen, I'm good. I love talking to you. It doesn't matter. So let's talk about your newest book, and then we'll wrap up with you letting everybody know about where you are on where, how they can reach you, and then we'll ask you for a pearl of wisdom.
Okay. I'm reading some of the comments.
I know, right? You can answer those if you like.
Okay. Yeah, Paul's singleness does not preclude his revelation on marriage. And so I believe that everything that he says in Ephesians and other places is very, very true and is very, very useful, and we use it. I think what's interesting is that what's missing in a lot of relationships is an image of what they want. Paul gives rudiments. Do this, do that, do that, do this, do that. And it is contextual as far as place and time. I think what people need, when I do premarital counseling, I'll ask the couple, is there a couple that you personally know that you say, I want that? I've seen them.
How they interact,
how they interact and this and I want that. Paul is not able to give that to us. Nope. And the Bible really doesn't give that to us.
No.
the couples in scripture are more Nightmare on Elm Street than they are Little House on the Prairie.
Exactly.
And so we can learn from them.
The name of that song, The Loneliest House on the Block. But
right. You know, it's the newest book is called Well Built, and it's actually book 2 of When I Became a Man. What I wanted to do is I went through, because When I Became a Man is in very, very narrative verse. And so what I did was I went through When I Became a Man and took out every principle. And basically what Well Built is, based on the same principle, males are born, men are built, is that there are 21 indispensable qualities of manhood. And so there are 21 qualities that I'm saying, if you're going to go from male to man, you need to incorporate these qualities. And so there are 21 of them. I intentionally made the narrative portion very short. It's 500-600 words or less. And then everyone goes through a workbook section where it sends them through a journey of developing that particular trait. And at the end of the chapter, they write what I call their manhood statement. And so this is my manhood statement on. So at the end, if they finish the book and do the work, they will have 21 manhood statements. This is who I am in this area. This is who I am in this. And so one quality is self-awareness, proper self-awareness. And so that I don't have to look for a relationship to define me, because there are many men whose esteem is tied to how many women they are able to get. So I have a self-concept. I have a true self-concept. Another quality is a solid work ethic. You know, do I have a work ethic? You know, no, I'm not a handyman. Derek Triplett is not a handyman, but I work my butt off on the stuff that I do. And so I have
so I can pay the handyman.
Yeah, I have and here's what's interesting, and I think it's for single moms as well, is that I said to my wife, because I have some bonus sons, and I said to her, I said, isn't it interesting? I said, isn't it interesting that single moms develop in their sons traits that they despise in a mate?
Yeah.
She's like, and what's interesting that it came up because I had just gotten my first shipment of Well Built, and I was opening the book, and she's like, just open your book, be quiet, just open the box, because solid work ethic. A woman will say in a minute, I don't want no lazy man, and I don't want no man who can't do anything for himself, and blah, blah, blah. But you don't let your sons do nothing. They don't pick up nothing. They don't do, they don't. And so it's like, so that can't be that important to you because you don't develop it. And in part because they don't want to, some of them don't want to eliminate their son's dependency on them.
That's true.
And so and so they ruin them. They ruin them. They ruin them. Mr. McCullough, good to see you. I love the title. I love the title. Actually, I'm going to add that to the list. I already know the next 2 books that are in me. I don't feel like writing either of them
right now.
right now. And so, so Well Built it's kind of a man's handbook.
Mm.
And so I'm hoping that it'll be very, very useful. We're going to, in a couple of weeks, I'm meeting with a couple of mentoring programs, and hopefully they'll use it as kind of coursework for their mentoring programs.
So can we get that book now?
Yes, that is available at DerekTriplett.com. DerekTriplett. And so Built is available at DerekTriplett.com. Well Built, the 21 indispensable qualities of manhood.
Are all your books available at that website?
The rest of them are available on Amazon.
Amazon.
This was the first one that I decided not to put on Amazon.
So before we go, I will say that we were talking about intimacy, right? And what a woman wants. And I remember dating a guy several years ago, pre-pandemic. And he said, Donna, what do you want? And I said, I want to be safe.
Mm.
And the room went still.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw him again. No, I'm kidding.
Wow.
No,
Wow.
but
he did you a favor.
Yes.
Because he said, she's not safe with me.
But what is that word? Why is that so scary to them?
I don't know. It's interesting. And not that we can use them as a reference,
as a general,
as their life is.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that we can't use the wisdom that they have. If you saw the clip when Will Smith talked about when he talked to Willow's boyfriend.
No, I didn't see
and he said to Willow's boyfriend, he said, if you handle these two things, we good. One, don't ever put your hands on her. And two, never leave her anywhere.
Make sure she's safe.
Make sure she's safe.
Yeah.
Make sure she is safe. Never leave her anywhere. And I think it's important that we want, it is that level of responsibility that especially many single moms in today's era are not teaching their sons.
Right.
Because they tell their sons, oh, I'm okay. I'm fine. Oh, I'm okay. Don't worry about me. And they're never taught how to be concerned about a female. Mm. And so, I deal with it in Well Built, and I also deal with it. There's a little ebook, free ebook that's on DerekTriplett.com called Lessons I Taught My Son.
Oh, I read that. I think I read that. Huh?
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a little thing that I put together because these were the things that I was hoping that I taught Donovan. Hmm. And so, and one of the things was to have a right concept of the male-female relationship. That's so important, that they're safe. I taught, my 15-year-old bonus son, it's like I said, if you and your mom, and I said, she's not going to tell you this, but if she picks you up from practice and stops for gas, I don't care if you just had a 5-hour practice, you go pump that gas.
Right.
You and just trying to teach the nuances, because when it's not done, it's not done. And I think it's important. So yes, as far as where to find me, Derek Triplett on Twitter and Instagram, DerekTriplett. Real Derek Triplett on Facebook. And of
the
course,
radio show? Where's the radio show?
Radio show is on WOKB Radio, Orlando, WOKBradio.com, which is my personal development show entitled Be Even Better, because I think it's important to live a life of continual improvement. And it is on every Thursday from at noon.
No.
And I've got a couple things that I can't wait to tell you about, but I haven't
Okay.
signed the contracts,
Okay.
so we'll tell you
We'll
later.
wait. Yep. So all I need is a pearl of wisdom from you, and I will let you go back to your life. I appreciate you.
It's something that I was actually thinking of earlier today. And I may have said this to you before, but it's a lesson that I have to keep relearning. And so I'm in the slow class on this one. Love people in a way that's valuable to them. Love people in a way that's valuable to them. We often try to decide the love we're going to give, and then they ought to be happy with it because that's what I want to give.
Right.
That's what I want to give. But what
that's all I got.
But you have to learn to love people so for example, if it's important and obviously I'm confessing because I haven't gotten there, if it's important to my mother that I call her more often,
Yes.
then even though I know I love her endlessly, but I need to love her in a way that's important to her.
Exactly.
So pick up the phone and call your mama. And so that is a lesson that I'm really, really just trying to learn. Love people in ways that's important.
And that is so important. I know we don't have time for that, but sometimes I have to text my son and say, I'm calling the police. So if you don't want the police at your house, because I don't know what you're doing, then you need to pick up this phone and let me hear your voice. Right. So anyway, I agree with you, Mom.
And that's the gamut. It's mom, dads, husbands, wives. Love people. It's old school. We talked about the gender roles. We go. Is that it's kind of like it's the lady who said, who baby boomer and beyond, and she asked her husband, you don't tell me you love me. And he's like, you see all that meat in the deep freezer?
No, she wrong.
That's proof to him that he loves her. But it's not, she's like, I don't want a steak right now. I want you to say that you love me. So love people in a way that's important to them.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Derek Triplett. I will see you in about 4 or 5 weeks. I appreciate you. And everybody, when you come on Monday night, I know it's a lot of places you could have been, a lot of things you could have done, but I'm glad you took the time to be with us. And we will see you January 6th, 7th, 8th at the F.R.E.S.H Book Festival. Good night, everybody. Good night, Derek.
Good night.